if we could begin tonight, we're carrying on with organizational structure. And last week we finished with Make It Fun. And we're going now with management styles. So a management style is the particular way and managers go about accomplishing their tasks, doing their jobs, managing their objectives. Right? It's how they make decisions, how they plan, how they organize work, how they exercise their authority. There are broad groups. I suppose if you put 100 different managers in a room, you get 100 different styles. I suppose nothing wrong with that. It's not nothing strange, but there are different groups. A good manager is one who can adjust their management style to suit different environments and employees. And we actually even discussed this last week. We discussed this last week, where the Apostle Paul said, "For the Jews I became a Jew," and so forth, but I was not to the point of being a sinner. So in Christianity, in the New Testament, we do understand there is a biblical understanding for adjustment, adjusting your styles. Right. An individual manager's style is shaped by many different factors. Internal and external factors will determine the kind of management style that's best applied. I think that's basic. It makes sense. It's follows. It's logical. So the three basic styles we're going to cover tonight is autocratic, democratic, and we decided that laissez-faire. It's a French word, but probably about the best pronunciation we can come up with. So the three main styles of management. And I'm sure all of us now, we tend to be a bit of an older group in this class. We've all probably had an experienced managers managing us with those three different styles. All right, so before we jump into them, the internal and external factors. Internal company factors that determine a management style include the company's policies. It's quite right. Different companies have very different policies, and you'll have to definitely adjust your style to your company's policy. I suppose, churches have different doctrines, and you will have to make some adjustments if you're in a different denomination. There's different emphases and so forth and so on. You might come as a pastor to a church and you have believers in different stages. Paul spoke about people, some people are on milk and some people are on solid food. What your priorities are, what you're trying to achieve in the company. Hopefully, Eskom has a very, very energized management style right now. We would all hope and think that they would have priorities to help the folks. But seriously, some things are urgent. When things are urgent, you can't be as democratic and polite. You've got to direct things. When things are better and things are running well, then we go more into the reward mode. Corporate culture. Definitely it differs from company to company, from private sector to public sector. Staff skill levels, we just said it, we're going to have Christians at different stages. There are baby Christians and there's Christians who are veterans for decades. So we can manage people differently, and the Apostle Paul spoke about that. Staff motivation and management structures, how we motivate staff, also differs from firm to firm, organization to organization, and how management structures are laid out will determine the manager's role and how he will, and the factors that will affect his management style. In order to be effective, a manager's style and outlook must fit into the business's organizational culture. I suppose that's fine. We've just said it before. Any adopted style must still adhere to the policies and procedures set forth by the organization. We can't break the rules. I mean, just to take an example, imagine now if we wanted to change in this church, if we had a pastor who wanted to change the way we baptize people. Now I want you to change the style. It just doesn't work. It must fit into your culture's or your organization's culture. They must still adhere to company objectives. And I suppose while we're at it, we must say they must still adhere to the laws of the land. You cannot run with illegal policies and procedures. So, to say again, staff skill levels and motivation greatly affect management styles, but it always remains necessary for a manager to accomplish set objectives. So, we don't get to blame it on the staff. We don't get to blame it on our followers. It's still the leader's responsibility to achieve objectives. External factors affecting management styles are those outside our control, which include the customers, the suppliers, the competitors, the economy, and the law. There are things outside our control that affects, and it's one of the things, the way it is. We've got to live in the world we're given, not in the fantasy world we'd like to. Simple as that. So, to come back to the 3 styles, and we'll look at them with their variations. So, the autocratic style, taken from the word autocracy, when we had aristocrats and that rule in the countries. Before we had democracies, we had kingdoms. The autocratic style. And the first type is the controlling person, where there is little trust or confidence in the employee. The autocrat rules, he just makes decisions and decrees, and the controlling person. Yeah, the manager dictates orders to the employees and expects them to do exactly as required. These employees tend to be unskilled. So on the one hand, I'm sure everybody has a testimony in their life about working for an autocratic manager, having a difficult boss. But sometimes if you have unskilled employees, it's not the worst thing in the world. When people have to learn, when a person are new and they're cutting their teeth and they have to be told and they have to comply and conform, people are, who I'd say doing probationary periods, new employees, not the worst thing. This requires constant teaching and coaching of staff and constant supervision. So it's not the worst thing with unskilled employees, but it's not going to be well received if your employees have lots of experience, if they are veterans. The pervasive management style, or maybe you can even call it a bit manipulative management style, where the manager still makes all the decisions but convinces the employees these decisions are in their best interests. The only real difference here is a higher level of trust between management and staff. So this manager is persuasive. This manager gets the employees to believe that these decisions are in their best interest. It's not the worst thing in the world if these things are indeed in the employee's best interest. I mean, after all, accomplishing tasks and goals and getting things done can lead to better remuneration, better bonuses, better dividends on shares and so forth. So it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world unless someone is being manipulative and not working in the employee's best interests. That's fair enough to say. The paternalistic style, right? Manager still makes all the decisions but treats the employees in a condescending way. The manager, I put you in inverted commas, explains his decisions and their importance. The employees may feel taken care of, but might become resentful of not being taken seriously. So this is, they say it in a condescending. If the manager is condescending, the style tends to breed high dependency, and I think it also can breed hard people who are not content. So it's not really much of an upside to this one if you're going to condescend to your employees. So the democratic style with its variations. This involves reaching decisions with the input of the employees, but still being responsible for the final outcome. It's a point we can't emphasize too much. that the leader is still responsible for the final outcome. A poor leader will blame the final outcome, if it's a bad one, on other factors and other people. The good leader still takes responsibility for the final outcome. It's versatile, with the advantage of there being more perspectives involved in decision making. So it's fantastic. It's great from that point of view. More people get to have input. But the disadvantages is the time it takes to make a decision. When I was still in East London, I heard a story from another church. They were independent church. Shiloh Fellowship, I believe, was their name. And he told me a story. They found a new building. They were given a new building to operate from. And it needed painting. So they said to the pastor said to the deacon, just take this money, go buy paint, and paint the inside. And he said, do not stop and ask anybody about the color. Not one single person. Don't even ask me. Just get paint and paint. Because he said, my brother, you start that, you're going to have to paint this church in stripes. Right? You'll paint this thing more colors of the rainbow, and then people will fight with you. The stripes went the wrong way. So a thing like that, it's disadvantage where too many cooks spoil the broth. But advantage, there can be more perspectives, there can be more expertise. Somebody might know how to solve the problem, but you've got to coordinate and keep some kind of control. There's a difference between democracy and anarchy. So the different variations, the consultative type of variation this is where trust and confidence is placed in the employees and the manager seeks out their opinions. So this would be with experienced people who've been in the job for years. So trust and confidence. So in a mature business, let's say maybe in a church with people who've been followers and worshipers for a long time, you can give people jobs and put trust and confidence, and they will do their jobs and ministries. So it's something that must grow naturally. You can't do it from the start with green employees. The participative, similar, but trust employees completely. Employees work together to make decisions as a group. However, a drawback can come from employees who do not want or care to be involved in decision making. So it's where it's basically handed over just about to employees. However, the problem is that when people are unsupervised or when people are in groups, sort of when the cat's away, the mice can play, is that some of these groups can become unfocused and just stop doing the work altogether. The collaborative style, managers communicate extensively with the employees and make decisions by the majority. This is to get everyone to take ownership in decisions. The disadvantage is that it's time consuming and the majority decision is not always the best decision for the business. So I suppose it's each one of these is a degree. You up in the democracy in the style of management by degree. So manager is maybe talking more and working less and checking less on the employees. But the thing is that people sometimes in groups make decisions in their own best interest, not in the interest of the company always. So I suppose it has its advantages and it has its drawbacks. The laissez-faire with its limitations. This involves little or no interference from managers. Staff don't need supervision. Managers take a hands-off approach, works best in organizations with flatter structures and or highly skilled staff. All right. Yeah, let's just say this is a style that gets practiced more often than what it is appropriate. There is a few, unfortunately, managers in the world which sort of take a bit too much hands-off approach with their staff. But nevertheless, it is appropriate in certain circumstances. In the delegative style, a variation, it allows employees to take full responsibility for their work. Tasks are assigned with little direction. The drawbacks are lack of uniformity and uncoordinated efforts, naturally. So basically, we give a task over and let the employee do the task and take full responsibility for the task. Now, naturally, it only works with a person who's competent and responsible. Definitely not for a new person. You can't do that. You've got to, delegating has got to be done appropriately and carefully. The bossless or self-managed teams. Employees are highly skilled and also highly educated and know more about the work than managers. These SMTs can report directly to directors. Interesting thing, when you look around, I've looked at it before, and some people have suggested this works best in certain military and in national intelligence situations. For instance, where you have special operations going on, special operation units, where people are highly trained to the point of being able to cope on their own if they find themselves on their own. It's a sort of a good idea. Or in the intelligence community, where certain, I know the fancy word is black operations, where people do highly classified work and will report directly to the cabinet, where you don't want all sorts of red tape and you don't want things reported through different layers, because secrets can leak. So it's where a group of people working independently will, or if you want to use the word clandestine, they will report directly to the cabinet. Something like this is appropriate. I wouldn't think this would be appropriate in a church situation, but it's just one example I did find. The management by walking around. So it's not an actual management style, it's a practice. These managers place the importance on interpersonal communication. Yeah, managers walk around the premises, checking with employees on the status of ongoing projects. The practice can be helpful in maintaining contact with employees and offering guidance, as well as mitigating problems. It's a bit of a shame Brother Daniel isn't on tonight, because a variation of this is practiced at our work. The general manager actually does this. Will walk around the floor where staff, we call it front of house, where staff deal with the customers. And the manager will walk around, but it's not only for the staff. The general manager will interact a lot with the customers, especially the VIPs. So we actually do see this one. Brother Daniel can testify to it as well. It's actually seen a bit at my work. All right. And most important when it comes to discussing all this is Jesus, our example. So these management styles have downsides and are worldly. And that, I think, we've emphasized strongly enough. These are all ways to handle private and public organizations. Yes, they have good principles and we can apply them. No one is arguing with that. Like we said in the first lesson, the church is not a business, but good business practices are not always a bad thing in church. But these are worldly ways of doing things with worldly objectives. As Christian leaders, we should be different. I should have underlined that and put it in bold. Okay, as Christian leaders, we're different. Our example is Jesus. And as we said last week, Jesus was the servant leader it's discussed in year one. He was a servant leader. He was a leader who led by example with humility. He was a leader who sacrificed of himself. Doesn't really fit the company mold, the private sector mold of the leader who climbs the ladder. Because most people manage from a point of view of climbing and growing their career. And Jesus led from the point of self-sacrificing and laying down his life. So it kind of goes in a different direction. But Jesus was also a visionary and transformational leader. The scriptures say that people perish for lack of vision. Where there's no vision, the people perish. So as a servant leaders, we bring vision and transformation in people's lives, personal transformation. Jesus led by example. Servant leaders seek the best for their followers. Right? Sometimes it can lead, they said, to missing the vision. Yeah, it's debatable, but they put it in the notes. But we seek the best for our leaders. We seek the best for our parishes, our congregations. We seek the best for people. Even though servant leaders, they serve their people, they should still lead, and most important, they should still remain responsible. So one thing that never should be delegated is the final responsibility, which means that we need to strive to grow our followers as we work to reach our vision together. Right? We have the vision to save all people, to the utmost. I'm not going to go through the full thing again, but that is the vision. If it's human and is still alive, it needs salvation. And even if the person dies, we'll still pray for them. Even if you die, we'll still pray for you. Not to worry. We'll always pray for you. Followers follow the vision as much as they follow the leader. Ultimately, because in Christianity, the vision is more important than the leader. The leader will sacrifice themselves if necessary. Nothing takes more important. Maybe instead of the vision, I should say the mission. Nothing takes priority over the mission. The mission is salvation. A good leader is able to get others to grab the vision and run with it. When we are gone, who carries on? It's a very good question. Who carries on when we're gone? So applying biblical principles to management. Business management is more than telling employees what to do. Managers must understand business organization, finance, communication, have a thorough understanding of their particular market, relevant technologies and policies. Fair enough. So you've got to know what's going on in your business and what's going on in the world around your business. You have to know. And I suppose absolutely the church needs to know that too. What's going on in the community around us? What's going on in the world? You know, who do we reach out to? What do we pray for? Who do we pray for? How did the people get broken? How do we fix them? So management versus leadership skills. Management skills overlap with leadership skills as both involve problem solving, decision making, communication, planning, and time management. Good managers are often good leaders, but it's two different things. A manager and a leader is two different things. Management is about organization. It's about the administration of a thing, how to run the thing. Managers, that's the manager's job, is how to run the thing, keep the thing going, keep oil in all the gears, keep the wheels turning. Right, that's basically the next point. I basically jumped on the next point. The critical role is to ensure the company's moving parts are all working properly together. Leadership is about people, and the church is more about people. Well, certainly, it's 99% the people, 1% the organization. Leadership is about the people. We want to transform, save the people, and transform the people. Communicating. Managers need to be able to communicate ideas and instructions to staff regarding the plans, actions, and anything else in order to get the job done. Communication can make or break a business, so there must be open communication. Absolutely. It makes or breaks a business. People don't know what's going on. No one tells them what to do. No one knows what to do. That's why things get broken. Managers need to be able to communicate, to speak. It's part of it. If you want the ministry, if you want to be a leader, you must be able to lead. Training. There must be a proper training to equip the staff to do their jobs. It must include sharing the vision, mission, and values. Training. We've got a whole of the fivefold ministry. We've got teaching. We've got to be teaching the people. I mean, what's going to happen between salvation and one day going to heaven? Sanctification. Or glorification, I should say. What happens is the process of sanctification. What do we do between born again and death or rapture, whichever comes first? What are we doing with the people? We must be teaching the people. We must be training the people. We must be growing the people. What are we doing with the people in the church? It's a good question. You should ask every pastor, what are you doing with the people in the church? Planning. Individual managers may or may not be involved in drafting company policy or strategy, but even those who aren't must be able to plan. They might be given certain objectives and responsibilities for developing ways to meet them. They may need to adjust plans to new circumstances. Well, 2020, we all had to adjust our way of working to new circumstances now, didn't we? It was a beautiful example. It's called 2020. And 2021 was almost as good. They will have to understand their resources. You've got to understand, develop timetables and budgets and assign tasks and responsibilities. Absolutely, you must understand your resources. You've got to work with what you have, not what you'd like to have. There's too many people trying to lead in the world by fantasy, not by reality. We've got to learn to work with what we have and do with what we have, not what we'd like to have. We can't have a testimony of if only. It can't be the thing. A person who says, if only this, if only that. No, with what we have and what we did. Organizing means creating structures to support plans. Organize the people. God is not a God of chaos. We must be organized. Let there be order in church meetings. How are we going to execute projects? How are we going to achieve deadlines and milestones? It would also mean helping leaders under you manage their subordinates. Organizing is about planning and foresight. It requires an ability to comprehend the big picture. I think we've actually have covered that well. What's going on in the church and what's going on around the church, we have to know. Delegating is assigning tasks in areas of responsibility. You define functions based on jobs that have to be done. You appoint people to specific functions and set boundaries of authority. Absolutely. And so we train the people by giving them work to do. Paul appointed many church leaders, and we've discussed them in year 2. We've seen the letters Paul wrote to them to coach them and counsel them and correct them. We have to. It's part of the thing to grow people. To coordinate, to bring the company together, to act as a unified whole. Managers must know what's happening, what needs to happen, and who or what are available to accomplish the tasks. If there's a problem, managers need to notice it and correct it. So we need to coordinate, notice and correct, work with the problems, need to know what's happening. Oversight is the maintenance phase of management. It means keeping track of what's going on and setting right anything that's not working. Maybe that's where the prophetic ministry comes in. We need to set right what's not working. We need to call out what's not working. We need to say what's wrong and what's right. And what's wrong needs to stop and what's right needs to grow. It might include anything from reviewing business models to checking for inefficiencies to make sure a project is on time and on budget. Feedback. This is when you get reports from staff about what they have done, how they have performed in reaching objectives and what the results were. Determine what's worked and what hasn't worked, as well as what the reasons were. Maybe I'll add to this one is feedback that the thing that requires maturity. We have to be mature to receive honest feedback, and we have to counsel people to be mature to receive honest feedback. Feedback maybe is the key ingredient. If it's feedback to work, people have to be mature. And we have to know the difference between good feedback and criticism that's just no good. We have to understand, what is constructive and what is not constructive. Directing. This is where you take charge and make decisions based on feedback. You communicate to your people what must be done. Problems that have come up need to be addressed. You may have to re-strategize or provide training for staff. So directing is giving orders. We have to give instructions. People must know what to do. People must know what they expected of them and what they have to do. So we must direct. Okay, and I know this is basically the last slide. Leaders need to lead by example. If you're always late, don't expect your people to be on time. Time management. Yeah, there's a few folks, people who attend service who need to learn a little about time management. Not so bad maybe these days, but definitely those who rock up halfway in the service. But, the same can be said for leaders. If you're on duty in a church, if you're in duty for a service, you must be on time. And the same for all other church meetings, like Bible studies and so forth. People must be on time. As leaders, we need to be conscious. We need to make sure that we are on time, that our projects are also completed on time. Assignments, folks, just small examples I'm picking on. But things need to be completed on time. We need to be dependable. If people see that they can't rely on us, how are they ever going to believe the message that we speak, the gospel that we preach? Can't let a small thing like time management ruin such important things. You must set realistic time goals. Don't compromise. Sacrifice in order to achieve your time goals. All goals, I did say it last week, it's worth saying it again, all goals and objectives and targets must be SMART. They must be simple. They must be measurable. We must be able to measure if they are done or not. They must be achievable. So they must be realistic. And then finally, they must be time measurable. They must be time sensitive. So all goals must be SMART: simple, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time smart. Okay, time manageable, time measurable. Otherwise, what objectives we setting in pie in the sky objectives? If you want to be more productive, then work on your time management.